Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 9 to Side podcast, where we chat with super amazing and inspirational people who pounded the pavement before and after their 9 to 5s to get their side hustles off the ground. After listening to the interviews with these amazing guests, you'll walk away with a refreshed pep in your step and a newfound motivation to make your side hustle a reality. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 20. I know what you're saying. When is the season going to be over? No, maybe you're not saying that. But yes, there's a lot of episodes, but they're all great. And I have so enjoyed meeting and talking to every guest that I've had on this season. They've all been so different, and I've learned so much from all of them. There's one more episode after this. I'm ending season 21. Fabulous number 21. I know it's an odd number, but anyway, I just had too many great guests, so I couldn't cut it off. So anyway, this is episode 20, and I'm very excited. And I know I always talk about this, and I feel like one of those old people. It's like, remember back in the day when it was so great? But back in my 20s, way back in my 20s, when I lived in the city, I always talk about this, and it was like the heyday of MTV. And I don't know if any of you can relate, but like I would have given my left pinky, I would have also given my right pinky, or all of my pinkies, both pinkies and all of my toes. Forget it. I would have given all my toes to be anywhere near MTV, in the MTV building. I actually snuck into the MTV building one time just to like try to get up to a floor where I could like give my resume. That's how insane I was. I was like, I want to work here. Like, please hire me. They didn't. I think I got escorted out. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it's like MTV was the thing. And you will also remember that one of the biggest genres back then, reality TV, was huge before it was like hugely saturated. So Real World, all that stuff. I also sent in like 5 million applications to try to be on Real World, all that stuff. That was like, it was like just the biggest thing. So my next guest, talking to him, he's incredible. He has a ton of experience. He actually co-founded MTV's talent development and original programming department. So he was part of that whole like development of the Real World kind of genre with the Osbournes, Newlyweds, Punk. Those are some of the shows that he helped develop. So of course, I mean, he had the job that I literally would have died to have had. And now he's taken all that experience. He's a media advisor and strategist. So he helps people really build their brand. He also has launched VPE Talent, the Verified Podcast Exchange, and the Discovery to Downloads Mastermind. And he has his own podcast called I Have a Podcast, which is a very appropriately named podcast, which I love. But he has a ton of experience, obviously, and it's great to hear all of the stuff that he has, his tips from the past, and just how important it is to build your own brand. And while he, this is all about side hustles. And I think one of the overarching themes of side hustles in general, whether you have a product or a business, whatever it might be, is really how do you brand yourself and how do you stand out from everybody else? And so I think Vinnie brings a lot of really great advice on how to brand yourself, how to be unique, especially in the podcast world and coming from the media background that he does. So I'm excited for you to listen to the interview. Without further ado, this is my interview with Vinnie Potestivo. Thank you for joining. Before we get started, just give me a little background on what you currently do. Obviously, it's not a side hustle, we know, but just tell us about you and your background and what you do.
That's so funny. But by the way, it's so funny you say it's not a side hustle.
Is it a side hustle?
You know, my whole career in television in the late 90s, it was all my way up. Like everything about it was a very vertical ascension, right? Coordinator, manager, director, vice president. I started a department. We grew the department. We took the MTV talent development department and turned it into a global sort of development unit and started developing content. It's always been up, very vertical.
Wait, just to stop real quick, did you always want to know really quick, because like jumping right into your back, because you
do it, sure.
MTV is big name, you throw it out. I think a lot of people, that was always my dream. I was like, please let me get into MTV, and it never happened.
Did you ever try?
I did. I walked right in the door back when you could like get in the door and walked up and submitted a reel and stuff. And going back to you, just really quickly, like context wise, did you always want to work in television? Like when you starting this job and you're saying,
that's interesting.
Doing this, just give me a quick like context to
It's interesting. You said,
how you got into
did
work.
I always want to work in television? As a kid, I just wanted to be on television.
Okay,
And
I
I
can
was
relate.
okay that a VCR could get me there. That was a weird thing to say. I don't even know why I thought that. Most people, that wouldn't be enough.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be inside it where everyone's, but for us, going to the VHS store and watching tapes, that was just another way to get something that I wanted when I wanted it on television. And I became obsessed with VCRs more so than television. How to take two VCRs and wire them together so I can edit, because I can hit pause and record. And as a kid, I would start editing commercials out of when I would record Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer claymation special and cut out all the commercials. It was that skill set that I walked into MTV with, and they were like, well, part of the casting process, we put them on tape, then we have to digitize the tape, then we have to go downstairs to the edit, then we do the edit, then we come back, and then we export it, then we show it. And I was like, or I could just record it and then edit it on two VCRs from my desk as an assistant, so I don't have to leave my desk when I'm answering phones, and I can just edit from my desk. And they were like, what? And here I am teaching a network, by the way, it's not very high. It's not you don't get a very high resolution product, but that's where the quality and talent mattered. So I built an obstacle I didn't even realize that I had to overcome, was like the quality of watching this was going to be bad. So the people they were watching had to be so damn good, but that made me push them, to be funnier, to be whatever that moment. I can almost remember every single person I worked with at MTV in their audition. I can almost remember the exact moment I knew. The first I met with Nick Cannon, and he was maybe going to come over to MTV and at that point maybe replace Carson on a show called Total Request Live. Yeah. Nick came in with his own idea. He wanted to do Wild 'N Out, and everyone passed on it. And then he went and spent money, recorded video to show the world, to show us what he was talking about. I got to work with these people who wanted to be.
How did you go from the desk, doing the VCR thing, to getting into the talent and media?
Also digital. It's so annoying. Also digital and tech skills. I'm really good at Excel. This is such a weird answer. I'm really good at Microsoft Excel. So 1995 to 1998.
Never would have guessed that.
I just wanted to build groups and communities and audiences, all of these things that I didn't know would be so important now. These digital skill sets that I had. I took a class outside of school where I learned the story that I was telling, the version of how I was introducing myself, and the version of the story that I was telling me could be changed. And that kind of threw me for a loop. And this was October of my senior year in high school. And I was one of those people that watched TV, and this ties in. I was one of those people that watched TV and didn't really see myself, except for maybe see myself on TV, maybe Jerry Lewis. I'm like a goofy kind, Jim J. Bullock, Three's Company. I was a very quirky guy, and I knew it. I knew it kind of wasn't exactly what you always saw on television. So when Howard Stern came out, I finally found myself on television. There she was, Robin Quivers. I meant to be the person who supports the person. I can be on camera and I can be creative and I can bring that structure. And then, by the way, quickly, Scooter, the Muppet, becomes my favorite because he was the stage manager and not the star. I'd be obsessed with supporting. And then I went to school 95 to 98. Which is Napster pops up, the hard drive goes away. We have to take our discs to digitize our music. We have to take our photos and scan them in to get them on GeoCities. I found myself in a technical support position for a lot of creative purposes, helping people with their Word documents and their PowerPoint presentations. I loved that stuff. And when I got to MTV, all of that training turned into talent one sheets and a show deck. And the importance of creating energy on a piece of paper in 1998 that needs to stand a test of time and passing. So I know that this paper is going to go into that meeting. And if they say yes, it's going to go into another meeting and another meeting and another meeting. And figuring out how to translate creativity, how to expand creativity out of the mind onto paper, onto discs, whatever. It was Robin from Howard Stern who told me, you're so good at databases. And I wanted to be surrounded by talent. I'm sorry, not casting.
Because it is such an interesting, you're all about.
So that's the other thing, right?
Being on
I wanted to be a
Broadway.
I wanted to be a Broadway producer. I'm from New York. And in 1995, Disney came in and cleaned Batman and Pretty Woman in the 80s. We were terrified to go. So I had this idea, this very romantic idea of Times Square, which is where MTV was. So it's weird to say this, but if MTV wasn't in Times Square, maybe I wouldn't have thought it was a cool opportunity because I just really badly wanted to work on Broadway. Right. More so than the businesses, I wanted to be there because of the talent that was there. And if this silly cable network is my way in, For years, I would tell people
people would have killed to work at that silly
now,
cable network.
now, and certainly then for sure too. And I worked on great shows, Tom Green show, but I worked on those shows in the capacity of, as a casting audience member. I would come in with my Excel spreadsheet with 60 audience members, and I can tell you who signed the release and who's coming back and how many shows they've been to. And then that turned into MTV would do Wanna Be a VJ, where they do thousands of auditions.
I love that.
My little database was the little database that would hold all that information in. And I helped people create audiences. Like I worked at Fox News. I traveled the country on Hannity and Combs. Fox News, it was a brand new cable network in the late 90s when I was just starting in my TV career in New York. So I'm very passionate about working in new projects in New York. And also, I'll say this. I did take one internship my senior year in high school at the Staten Island Local Access channel. And that's where I learned how to digitize 3/4 into 1/2-inch tapes. And I learned what the control room was. I wanted to be an engineer, like a media engineer. And it kind of became a career engineer through media. Because when I got to MTV, my job was to help support casting. So like, what does that look like? I'm the casting assistant holding the camera in the audition room when Beyonce is auditioning for the first feature role she ever had on Carmen, a hip hopper on MTV. I mean, these are the crazy experiences that you're throwing, that this network, this place that I'm working into is throwing me into. I had no grasp of what I was doing. Also, social media wasn't around. So like, I wasn't afraid of what I didn't know because I didn't quite know what I didn't know yet. It was like a different struggle.
Did you feel like during the day when you were doing this full-time job, you were because you develop, like now you help develop careers, you've built brands, like you do that stuff. Obviously,
Same.
Yeah. I mean, did you start to realize that you were really good at that? Did MTV kind of usher you into that?
Sure.
Or was that like a side thing you were fostering, almost like how did that come about?
Well, I think where I was going earlier with the sort of vertical nature of the beginning of my career is that everything for me is side to side now. Everything is a side hustle. If you're not growing horizontally, if you're not networking horizontally and not just vertically, you're not doing yourself a service. My side to side is really important for me, my side hustle. The side hustle for me that got me into MTV was I can edit tapes, be able to sell like a South Park VHS tape for $10 if I had a couple of, it was horrible that I would just finding ways to support talent. I loved Napster when it got to MTV. I was always very focused on the tech piece of sharing. And again, that to me was like the most important piece. What I was surprised about was the TV industry. TV industry is a result of the advertising industry, right? So like advertising runs television. The most important thing on television are the commercials. The Super Bowl, the most important thing about the Super Bowl, those commercials that fund everything about the power of that platform of Super Bowl that we know globally. Yeah. And the way that it's monetized. So for creators, that's monetized based on minutes produced, hours produced, episodes produced. It's not based on impact. I got into casting because I loved working with people. And the people I worked with were what changed me. I thought I wanted to work with actors and models and just traditional theatrical talent. I got what I asked for. What I didn't know was how talented those people were. What I didn't know was Ashton Kutcher coming to MTV, who was already a #1 box office hit, already a #1 television hit actor, coming to us saying, everyone thinks I'm just like a pretty guy who can only be in films. Or maybe produce them, but no one thinks I can create a show on television and produce it and have a production company. And I want to do that with you because this is the place that gives people like me a shot like that. And that conversation, and the same exact conversation with Sharon Osbourne, the same exact conversation with Ashlee Simpson. I didn't have to believe in the power of what I could do because I was seeing the power and what I could do in terms of collaborating with people who had a strong vision. That was the thing though. Having a strong vision helped me land them and create the products and I think the longevity that they were looking for.
Did they come to you with the idea and you helped put it on paper and basically make it sellable to the network? Like they came to you being like, this is what I want to do? Or did you say, look, you want to do something? Here's an idea that I think would work for you because this is who I see you as. Or was it all of that? It was a combination.
Right. So
you're collaborating with them solely. That's sort of where you
with Sharon Osbourne had this idea of telling her family story. Didn't quite know what it was when she approached my boss about it, and he just moved to LA and they went to lunch and we knew there was something there. Ozzy was out of the MTV demo, so we knew there was a nostalgia. MTV in the late 90s also turned 21, barely legal. It stopped being a rock network. It started being a global pop culture, global presence, more so than just rock and heavy metal that it was kind of launched as. Ozzy was, to be honest, a weird choice for the first foray into what we did, but we looked for opportunities. So we saw that Cribs was looking for houses. They had a great house. We could have Kelly and Jack host the show, and there we have a great episode. From that episode, because it did so well, it would re-air, it would do so well. We cut that down and then pass that around internally. And ultimately, I think it was The Real World Meets the Osbournes, which is MTV's language.
I love that show.
And that's how that show came about. Punk'd, he came in with ideas. We had ideas. We went back and forth. We piloted something. There's a story that I can't tell you on record, but I'll tell it to you off record. And long story short, it became a different version of the show that it was going to be. And now it is, known as what everyone saw it as.
That show, yeah. That was
and
a great
then,
show.
So he had the vision. He saw the opportunity to leverage a creative like on MTV. Ashton saw that. And then with Jessica and Nick, it was, we had met Jessica about 2 years earlier when Jess, Mandy Moore, Christina, and Brittany, they were kind of the boom of the female solo artist was coming out. And we looked at Jessica maybe as like a VJ, and her just being herself was always what she was great at. Mandy Moore just always was eloquent and had the words, and she built great barriers where she didn't have to be the version of a female that it needed to be in the late 90s. Like she was already working on that mindset. Jessica approached it differently. Jessica came to us and said, if you give me 30 minutes a week, we can show the world who I am. That's kind of what I learned at MTV. And that's why when podcasting changed and video cast changed, and when I say change, it changed the industry, because up until we had access to create our own content and own it and put it on air and distribute it, everything had to go through a network, a series of approvals that had to happen for ideas to get made. And
yeah, it is crazy to think back to the MTV days. And I mean, now you have, like, in the spirit of side hustles and the people in this, like, who listen to this podcast, you have so much going on now. You have your own podcast called I Have a Podcast. So talk to me a little bit about your various kind of all. You
want to know my podcast side hustles?
Your podcast
stay in
side
that
hustles.
Vertical. That's
yeah,
great.
and then I don't want to, like, I know you have limited time, so I want to hear about some of the tips and things that you would recommend, because I think you have so much experience building other people's brands, recognizing talent, understanding the importance. While it may not be the media industry for a lot of these people, they're building businesses and various coaching or products or whatever it might be. I think the consistent theme is understanding your audience, being able to build a brand, and reaching the people that want to see that content. And to me, that's what I think you do so well. And so I would love
you.
I think you do it across multiple platforms, right? You've got your podcast, you have experience working with people in the media industry. So
I really appreciate the way that you see the success or energy that I have in the space. The truth of the matter is there's one thing I struggle with the most. It's actually consistency. If I didn't work so hard to have a strong structure and support system around me, it would be really hard for me to be consistent. I'm not saying I only batch create, because I've worked on shows, Housewives of New Jersey, where we shoot a little bit every day for years and years and years. And I've worked on shows where we shoot 5 episodes a day. So I've been trained, in many different ways, but I have burnout. That's a real deal. But what I don't let that burnout do is affect my publishing. So I really separate the creating from the publishing. I create what I can create. That's really important.
And you're talking about your content. When you say create, you're talking about just anything, or
to be really honest, anything I create is because I can, not because I should. If I'm at the should part, that should be publishing. I should be airing it, making the change. But if I can or if I can go live, when I'm going live, there's maybe the mixture of both of those needs and wants. But a lot of us create content we feel called that we should make, almost like a responsibility. Like when that calling comes in, I call myself every day. So like, I know every single month what word, and I have 12 months a year. And I break that out annually into one word per month that I can really focus on right now. Right now, the word is empathy for the month of March. And I'm thinking of empathy from a passion perspective, from a power perspective. And I'll talk to you actually. So empathy for me is important because time is important. Your time is important. And I know mine is too. I also don't have the mindset that we're not promised tomorrow. So I know and there's a lot of conversation about this. Some people say, you're never promised tomorrow, so live in the now. And for me, what got me out of the darkest parts of my childhood and like, and also my adulthood, I'm not going to lie, is believing in tomorrow. If I don't believe in tomorrow, what am I doing today? Don't want what I have today. I want tomorrow to be better today. That's literally, truly how I wake up. So that being said, I want to be very clear about some things. I've had a podcast February 2020, so 2023. So 3 years I've had a podcast now.
Do you make any revenue on the podcast? Is that
yes,
you get?
I'm very excited to talk to you about that.
Go ahead.
So I have 35 episodes that I've published so far. Great. Consistency is a problem of mine. I'm the gate. I say it, by the way. And I don't break it down into seasons either. I leverage those episodes in a very unique way. Also, I'm very excited, Alexandra. This is the first time I almost just stuttered because I haven't said this out loud yet. As of this month, we're officially on the LinkedIn Podcast Network. I have a podcast as a now LinkedIn Presents podcast. Unbeknownst to me, LinkedIn created something called the LinkedIn Podcast Network Academy, and they selected 19 podcasts to fast track over a 6-month pilot program to the LinkedIn Podcast Network. So it gives us access to tools and exposure on the network and in a really conductive, creative way. I applied and I failed. Like most people, by the way. I got a thank you gift, 3 months of free Descript. Here's a LinkedIn code. I'm very happy for all of those things, but I thought that was the end of my journey. But I also met people along the way and I stayed in touch with them. I would tag them on my journeys. But I just want to point out 31, I think, or 32 episodes out. So I'm not hyper consistent. I am consistent in terms of what I talk about and who I have on my podcast. So because I know I can be in flux, instead of having multiple guests every single week or one different new guest every week, I have a cast of people that will return. I'm lucky to have worked with people over 25 years that are still in my life. Why not just show the world what a relationship that's 25 years rich doing? I'll show you and I'll talk to you about the things that, are going to help you grow. But I also want you to just see the amazing connections that we can be making peer to peer. And I'm a dude from Staten Island. I didn't have a single family member in the industry. I didn't even know how to get into the television. I didn't, obviously, as you heard earlier, I don't even think I necessarily tried opportunity until I saw how my little Excel spreadsheet and how I could show up and be surrounded by that level of talent. That was my goal. The people were my goal. My side hustles have got me to where I am right now. Most people focus on growing a podcast, brand. I have a podcast. I also registered it. So I have a podcast.com is a digital platform. I took that digital platform. That's a blog. It has an RSS.
I have a podcast is the name, just so people don't get confused.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So when you're saying I have a podcast, that is the name of your podcast. It's called I Have a Podcast.
It's called, my podcast is called I Have a Podcast.
I love
it. My TV show is called I Have a Podcast on TV, and it's available on Bespoke TV and about a half dozen AVOD networks, Cox, Comcast, like our regular TV show. I Have a Podcast on the radio is my radio show. That's a 27-minute weekly show that airs in a local market during FM morning drive one time a week. And I have a daily spot that pushes to that. All of these placements, by the way, I bought a radio placement so I can control the ownership of my show. Also on the radio, not in digital television. And I'm able to target geographic locations based on the information that I know where the actual frequency goes. I spend maybe $15-20 a month pushing people to the radio network that I know I'm going to be at just for social proof. If you'd like to hear, I also don't change the show.
So is it the same content that's on your podcast? So you're doing one set of content, you're just pushing it out to different places.
Exactly. I own the interview that I sat down with Mandy Moore. I did a 45-minute interview. I took that 45-minute interview and I turned it into 4 different TV shows because, talk shows usually have a celebrity at the end. Mandy and I talked about a bunch of topics. So now what I do is I go in and in the beginning of the episode, have a whole conversation about what I know Mandy Moore and I are going to talk about so that when I can toss to Mandy Moore's segment, Mandy and I talk about the input dictates the output and you have to watch TV to make TV. Meanwhile, we had a whole conversation with another creator there. So I can pull and leverage that relationship, that interview that I have with her in a unique way.
That is really, really helpful. People, and I'll direct people to your site because it sounds like you've done a lot of this. You have done a lot of this. You have a whole hub out there.
I want you to got it.
Research. People can go to your site and I'll include the links are in show description. This is super helpful. So In kind of wrapping up, what would you say you're earning the most revenue, like from side hustles and where your money comes from now? Like what takes the most of your time and where is most of the money coming from? And would you say they're all
Yes.
side hustles? Do you have a main business right now that you would consider a main business, or you think they're all side hustles?
I'm trying to think if I want to let my other hustles know which one is my favorite. Right now, I just did this actually. So the number one way I'm making money is my one-on-ones. The second most way I'm making money is the way I'm leveraging my media. A lot of it is I'm utilizing my podcast space for whether I'm creating. So I have a podcast and I sit down with an interview. What I can do is I can create a commercial, dynamic commercial that I can put into any episode. So if I'm meeting with somebody and I think there's a really cool opportunity for a masterclass, a 5-minute masterclass, I don't have to create an episode about that. I can take that 5-minute masterclass and put it at the beginning, middle, or end of all my podcasts and tell people at the end of this episode, there's a 5-minute podcast, listen to it. So I get to listen on the episode. I'm not asking the person to change where they go. They know exactly where to find me. They already subscribe to the podcast. I'm not asking them to do something new to get something new.
Do they have to pay for the
does the business have? No.
Yeah, like does the person
business
listening?
pays. No, business pays. So a business pays for the masterclass because I'm telling them what it should be titled, what questions we should ask, who should be answering those questions. I help them form that conversation and then I create the content for them. And we put that out on vpe.tv/hub. There's an article called Creator Marketing Platforms That Pay. This is a good one, by the way.
Okay.
Podcasters who aren't getting paid. If anyone's out there, I'm not getting paid. How do I get paid on my podcast? Go to this tab. It's vpe.tv/hub. It's Creator Marketing Platforms That Pay. You'll see the all-in-one stop shops that are marketing platforms that ask to work with creators based on brands wanting to work with us. They don't know us, so they pay these middlemen, these middle companies to organize the information, search the data, validate we are who we say we are as creators, pay us, organize the campaign. What it looks like, some people think that just means social media content. Like I'm going to get paid to talk about, some razor on social media or something like that. And that's probably what the first few requests will look like coming in, but how you execute them is up to you. This is an opportunity to get paid with a brand, to show a brand that you as a creator can create content. As a podcaster, I have a different reaction to creating that type of post level content than I think an influencer does. So when that opportunity came to me, I thought, well, I have to make sure they understand I'm a podcaster. For me, it's more about this microphone and the uplighting certainly demonstrate my expertise in the audio world, right? And I know my strength as a brand. What I'm not going to do is go on TikTok dancing around with a razor because I'm getting paid by a brand to sell the razor. What I am going to do is take my audio brand as an audio creative and find a way to use this opportunity to enhance my brand and not just, sell a product, but be open to opportunities and building those relationships. And I got to be honest, it takes a couple of the $500, $700, $800 first requests that come $250. That's how they all look at first. By the time you're done talking about exclusivity and usage and terms and that's something that I can help you with as a creator to understand what people ask for in the room. That's something I learned from MTV. I got really good at deal negotiating because I was always part of the deals. I know what to help people ask for. That's a big reason why I do what I do. Cause I'm like, there's so much money that if you just knew how to ask, then
this is all really
it's right there.
This is all such interesting info that I've never heard or thought about. And again, like you said, it's just knowing where to find it, knowing where to ask. I also think it's interesting you talked about LinkedIn because I think a lot of the people that I interview and talk about building their Instagram and their followers and doing that. And one of probably a few people I've heard that like LinkedIn is a really big place to be now. Do you feel like that is?
For me, LinkedIn is where I can come. It's sort of like true and time tested. The social proof of who you say you are. There are lots of different ways that prove you are who you are. And it makes me not want to have to feel like I have to rush to do business with you. Instead, it lets me build a stronger relationship with you. If I meet you on Instagram, we're going to talk on LinkedIn. I spend more time on LinkedIn too. So I'll also say to you, like, if you just want quicker response, you got to come to LinkedIn because the Instagram, I'm a sucker. Everything Instagram does works for me. My attention is like a goldfish on Instagram. On LinkedIn,
I am too.
Right on LinkedIn, I'm really like, you're not going anywhere. I'm not afraid that being a lot of a majority of one-on-ones now coming from LinkedIn, which is cool because it's a level of talent I haven't gotten to work with yet because I've been gated in television, working with like creatively trained talent. Now I can help people who are creatively inept be amazing out. And it's like, I'm playing in your sandbox with your rules. I just know how to do the thing I know how to do, which is help you stand out, help make you be the brand that people want, that they find so much value in your presence that they have to share you. It's all about sharing. Oh my gosh, I had the best interview. You have to meet Alexandra. You have to listen to this thing. Like, that level of sharing is what helps us grow. And
I love that. And so when you say one-on-one, that's what you do. You're meeting people who are looking to build their brand. Does it matter? So for anybody listening to this podcast who's got a side hustle, who's like, look, I have a product I'm trying to sell, or this is my company and I just want to build my brand. Are you a person they could reach out to talk to be like,
yes,
you're that guy?
This is how it started, to be blunt, with celebrities, because they trusted me with their brand. I never helped Beyonce make an album. I never helped Mandy Moore make an album. I just believe in the power of people in this collaborative world. Podcasting for me is a collaborative. It's like Play-Doh. It's like, I can do more with podcasts. I can convert a podcast into a TV show. I started doing that in 2006 was the first into something than it is for me to convert a hit movie into a TV show or a book into a film, or all the other ways that we can kind of move creativity and evolve brands. Podcasting for me is the one that's the most valuable.
So do you take people's, like, do they have to have a podcast for people that are listening? It doesn't have to be a podcast. They could just have a business to work with you. And then do you amplify their personal brand through podcasting? Is that what you're saying? Is that's your vehicle to help them?
I like podcasting as a media type, not as a media industry. As a media type, it means it's an audio file that people can subscribe to and get. Right. So I'm a fan of helping. Some of the strategy is like, let's build one lead generator, one finite 60-minute or 30-minute episode, the 2023 Ultimate Guide to Podcasting by Vinnie Potestivo. Make that one resource on podcasting so that when I can take you on a tour through podcasting is a great way for me to grow brands. You're getting social proof. You're getting content from it. It's a very low lift in terms of being a guest, as long as you do the work and show up with value. That's where the hard part really comes into play. Sticking to your talking points, being confident in who you are. That comes from you. I got to be honest. People into podcasting because it's something that's easily shareable. It's a brand new medium, not in terms of content. I'm not asking you to create posts.
Right.
I'm asking you to create something now that's an hour, that's great, that could be relevant 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. I'm not asking you to get millions of downloads today. I'm telling you that this has the potential over your lifetime to support you in an audio space where in photo and video, you can get a lot wrong. You know, photos need edit. You know, there's a reason why we have so many filters to help people with their creativity and edits now. You know, there's even more AI around edits. You can do a lot of damage with video and AI, but audio is a little bit more excusable and leaves room to the imagination. There's something there to that.
I completely agree. And I just think I think their podcasts, a lot of people are like, oh, it's so saturated. But I think what you
says who? How many poems? How many books? How many TV shows? How many films? Like, says, by the way, the industry is growing because the universe is growing. But the difference in the universe, well, actually, it's the same. Podcasting and the universe, it's all alchemy. The universe is physically expanding, they say, and literally getting bigger. Podcasting is growing because this collaboration between me and Alexandra, like this, we grew the space out versus television, which got smaller because it was an industry that's owned by other people. The people within it are subject to get squished out, faded out. But in podcasting, where we own it, where we have the ability for growth, I got to be honest, I think some of this mishigash about the growth comes from TV people. I'm one of them, but like, oh, don't be a podcaster. You know, it's an oversaturated market. Says who? Like,
well said.
Says the person at channel 5856B. You know what I mean? So
I so appreciate that. I don't care if it's saturated. I think it's
it's proof.
I love
proof
it.
that it works. The world's getting bigger, and we have not even seen
it's a healthy outlet. They aren't specifically a podcast, or they think maybe it's not for them, but you really kind of gave such great reasons and sold why I think podcasting really is such an interesting thought for people who might not have considered it before, who have businesses, side hustles, and it's not necessarily in the podcasting world, it's products or doing things, but how you can leverage the art of speaking and communicating with people through podcasts they can meet with you one-on-one to get ideas and strategy about how they can build their brand. So I can't thank you enough for all of your feedback, all of your advice. It was incredibly helpful. So in closing, just tell everybody where they can find you, all the information, your email address, all of that good stuff.
I appreciate that. I hang out on LinkedIn a lot. First and foremost, my podcast is LinkedIn Presents. I have a podcast, so check me out wherever you're listening to How about this? You've been listening to the podcast, and I'm not leaving, by the way. I refuse to leave without leaving you a 5-star review. And I'm going to do that by going to the same app that I push play on to listen to this podcast. I'm going to go back to wherever I push play, and I'll leave a 5-star review for you. The act of generosity isn't in leaving you the 5-star review. It's in taking a snapshot of that and putting it on my Instagram and on my social and showing people, sharing the fact that I left this 5-star review for you. So when you're done leaving the 5-star review for Alexandra Parakis on this podcast, finally, it's free. What took you so long to leave the 5-star review? Then afterwards, you can come find me on I Have a Podcast. I have a podcast.com. I hang out on LinkedIn. If my name is so long, you don't know how to spell it, check out Alexandra's list of friends. I'm in the V section down on the bottom. You'll find me there. I am where I am when you find me. I'll say it that way. And don't wait until you need it. Don't wait until the world tells you what to do. You have a lot of control over what happens. You have a lot of freedom over your discovery now that we did not have 20 years ago or even 5 years ago. And if I can help you claim those barriers, boundaries that help you be more successful in that world, then this world will be a better place. And that's what I show up for.
Thank you so much.